Hola mis amores, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sage, and if you are here for the first time, thank you so much for discovering my channel, and if you are returning, thank you for your loyalty. Today we're going to look into another lesson of history. The last lesson we spoke about was the lesson of the Oriental Plan. So today we're going to be looking at Namibia under the occupation of Germany. I'll start explaining through a chronology of events from 1883 to 1890, which then later we are going to get into the lesson of the War of National Resistance, or some may call it the Nama-Herero-German War of 1904 to 1907, or some say to 1908. So let's get right into it. So how did Namibia become a colony of Germany? So in 1883, a man of the known as Ludwig decided to buy land from the Nama chief at the time, Joseph Fredericks, and he bought it because he believes that Britain wanted to make Namibia, or at the time German Southwest Africa, as a wanted to make it their protectorate. So they bought the land, and when he bought the land, he decided that the Chancellor of the Germany at the time, Otto von Bismarck, should mark Namibia as a territory of Germany. So in 1884, Namibia was claimed, or it was taken as a territory of Germany, which then became formally known at the time as German Southwest Africa. So going 1885, the Germans, when they came after arriving in the Herero land, they decided to extend the whole of the territory, or to extend the whole of the colonization process to the whole of Namibia. And in 1886, the border between Namibia and Angola was then separated as to how far would the Namibian border go, and from where is the Angolan border going to start. And it was only in 1890 that the first German militant fort was built in Windhoek, and in July an agreement was signed between Britain and Germany. The agreement allowed Britain to have access to the Zambezi River, and this Zambezi River led them all the way to the Zanzibar in Tanzania, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to have access to the Zanzibar in Tanzania. So it's like a trade was made that Caprivi Strip was to be given to Germany, and the Zanzibar was to be given to Britain, because if you know the history, you would know that Germany was not only the colonizer of Namibia, but also colonizer of Tanzania. But the Germans are like, look guys, this is it. I'll give you the Zambezi River, access to the Zambezi River, so that you're able to go to the Zanzibar. In return, you will give me the Caprivi Strip. And now let's get right into it, and what transpired when the Germans arrived in Namibia. So after the arrival of the Germans in Namibia, they settled in the Herero land, and let's just say it was not so much of a good settlement, because Herero cattle as well as Herero land was confiscated by the Germans. Well, in disguise of protection treaty, they said that they were going to protect Namibians against the British occupation. But in actual terms, these leaders, the Namas and the Herero leaders, were actually signing off their land to the Germans, and their cattle as well were taken from them. At the time, the Nama people were being led by Hendrik Witbooi. Those of you that don't know who was Hendrik Witbooi, if you want to see his image, just take the 50, the 100, as well as the $200 million notes. The face of the Nama leader at the time, Hendrik Witbooi, is on the Namibian dollar. The confiscation of the cattle and the land, Hendrik Witbooi, who was the leader of the Nama at the time in 1894, decided that they are going to revolt against the Germans, that they're not just going to sit around and wait for the Germans to take their land. So they revolted. Unfortunately, the revolt was not a success, and as a result, they were asked to sign what is known as the Protection Treaty. The treaty allowed that the Nama people would be able to keep their weapons, as well as Hendrik Witbooi had to agree that they were going to back off, and that they were no longer going to resist against the Germans. Most of you have probably heard the name Lothar von Trotha. Some even say he was much ruthless compared to Adolf Hitler, because he is the man that is behind what is known as the War of National Resistance, the very first genocide of the 20th century. Some do not recognize the Nama-Herero-German War as the first genocide of the 20th century, because they said not quite a number of people were killed for it to be classified as a genocide. But my question is, what number of people need to die before a killing is recognized as a genocide. But that's not the lesson for today. Let's get right into it. So in 1894, Major Theodor Lutvin, he was appointed as the governor of the German Southwest Africa, and with his appointment came what is known the Schutztruppe. Now the Schutztruppe was military or soldiers from Germany, and they were also sent to German Southwest Africa in support of the new colonial administration. We are now going to look at the impact of the colonial rule on the Namibian people, or at the time on the German Southwest African people. Now, under the Litvin colony, or under the Litvin rule, came what was known as the divide and rule policy of colonization. So the divine rule objective was that it cost to a minimum for Germans. Germans had not to pay an arm and a leg to obtain whatever they wanted, and it also had to make it clear that Germany was in control and not Namibians. Now, German Southwest Africa attracted a number of settlers because it was known to be outside Germany. Namibia was considered as one of the best lands that white Germans could settle. So in 1892, reserves were made. Now the reserves were to divide the people. Blacks had to stay away from whites, and whites had to stay away from blacks. So the main idea of the policy, or of the divine rule, was to make sure that the Germans were in control. It was to help the German government, to control the movement of the indigenous people, or the German Southwest Africans. It was also to make sure that the German Southwest Africans, or the Namibians, did not have political independence. They could not vote for whoever they wanted. They didn't have a say in whom they wanted to be the one to rule them. Concession companies were given land in northern and central part of Namibia, but this land was only given to the settlers and not the Namibians. I mean, you found people on a land already that they've settled there. How do you come and take their land? So this was done through the taking of land. Land was not bought. They were told that this land is now going to belong to this certain business. You move. You don't want to move, you get killed. That's how it was. So over the years, with the occupation of Germans in Namibia, every land or every cattle that was owned by the Namas and the Hereros was eventually passed on to the Germans. They took over the land as well as the cattle, as if they were their owners of it. Now let's look at the War of National Resistance of 1904 to 1908. What transpired? What led to 75% of the extermination or the killing of the Herero people of Namibia? At the time, the Germans were only made up of about 250,000 people. And out of those 250,000 people, 75% of them were killed. It may look like a small number, but to the Herero people, that was such a great loss, because the whole idea of Lothar von Trotha was that he wanted to get rid of all the Hereros and Namas in Namibia. About 1903, about 3,000 Germans had settled in Namibia. They had settled in good land, good fertile land, and land that did not belong to them, as well as cattle that did not belong to them. As I've mentioned, this land belonged to the Hereros. Obviously, the Herero people were not going to sit down and just be with their arms crossed and let the Germans take their land. They had to revolt. They decided they were going to fight against them. Obviously, during the time of the occupation from 1883 until such a time of the conflict, then Namibians had learned how to use guns. They knew how to use weapons, and also because through the trading, they received arms, they received also alcohol. Unfortunately, that was also a way of trading. I give you something, you give me something in return. I give you a bottle of whiskey, you give me your land. I give you a gun, you give me 10 cattle. That's how it was. But they realized that they were being ripped off. That's when they decided, enough is enough. We are going to fight you, and we are going against what you have done to us. Let's now look at the conflict of 1904 to 1908. Now the battle began Now the battle began on the 12th of January 1904. I should mention that the Herero people were under the leadership of Samuel Maherero, while the Nama people were under the leadership of Hendrik Vedbo. So it was in Okahanja where the whole battle started, where the fighting started. So this is what happened, is that they had laid an attack, or they had laid a siege on the fort of the Germans in Okahanja. They said, we are going to attack your base, and that's exactly what they did. After they had laid this siege, Maharero was very specific. He specified to his soldiers that do not touch a woman, do not touch the old people, do not touch children. Our battle is against the soldiers. We are not going to hurt civilians. Those were the specific rules of Maharero. But when it came to the German leader, he did not care if you were a child, a woman, any civilian. As long as you were a Herero, you were gonna get killed. So this is what happened. The Hereros were well armed and they outnumbered the Germans. So Ludwig, he realized that if we don't stop this, we are going to be killed. So he decided that they wanted to have an agreement with the Hereros to settle this peacefully. But unfortunately, the commanders or the people in charge in Germany did not want that. They said, they came and attack you. We are not going to settle peacefully. We are going to attack back. The Germans under Ludwig decided to continue with the fight. Unfortunately, this was not a success to them. They were still outnumbered and they lost the battle. That's when he was relieved of his duties. Now, after the relieving of Ludwig, then came who was known as Lothar von Trotter. Lothar von Trotter arrived in Namibia on the 11th of June 1904. When he arrived here, he found that the Herero people were no longer settled in Okahanja, but they had moved over to the Waterberg Plateau. He came here, he said he wanted peaceful negotiations. He did not want to continue fighting, and that he just wanted to have peace between them. So what happened is that he decided he's going to take that risk. You know, he was going to move his troops to the Waterberg Plateau. He did not even know how to get there. The map to get there was incomplete, but that's a risk that he was willing to take. On the 11th of August 1904, Lothar von Trotter ordered his 1,500 soldiers to go and attack the Herero people. Now the Herero army was made up of about 40,000 soldiers, but that's a chance, or that's a risk they were willing to take. They took the risk, and it was not an easier one. Although the Hereros had an amount of 40,000 soldiers, out of the 40,000 soldiers, only 5,000 of them had arms or had weapons to fight against the Germans. Although the Germans were few, they had better machinery to help them fight. It was a bloody war. People died, you know, and the Germans decided, we're going to take a chill break. We're going to, you know, withdraw for a while, because we know that these Hereros do not stand a chance. Now, during the break, or taking time off the war, it gave the other Herero people a chance to escape into the Kalahari, to actually run away, because now they were going to be defeated. After the attack, it was very hard for the Hereros to win the war. Although they had a whole lot of men, they did not have the machineries and the weapons that the Germans had. So the attack was bad. The attack was not a success. As a result, about 12,000 of the Herero people were captured and placed into concentration camps where they were used for medical experiments. And those that were not taken to concentration camps, they tried to escape into the Kalahari, hoping to go all the way into Bechuanaland, present-day Botswana. But many women, children, and older people died. They died of thirst, they died of fatigue, and they died also because of poisoning. Because as they were thirsty, you know, walking throughout the desert, as they got hold of, or they got water holes, they could not drink from these water holes because the water holes were poisoned by the Germans. So it was unable for them to drink, because if they drank the water, they would die. If they did not drink the water, they'll still die from fatigue and thirst and dehydration. 25% of the Herero people was totally wiped out during this revolt of 1904. As from 1905, this war was not only the Herero War, it now became a Nama-German Herero War, because the Germans were now being attacked by the Nama people. So the Nama people, under the leadership of Hendrik Witbooi in 1905, decided they were going to go up against the Germans. And through their good use of the guerrilla tactics, they were able to keep the Germans on their toes for about 2 years, because they knew the land. The Germans did not know the land. They knew where to hide, they knew what to do, and for the Germans it was harder for them to win against the Nama. If we go back and we read the instruction of Samuel Maharero, he said that he did not want to kill children, women, civilians. They were not part of the war. Now, when it came to Lotte von Trotter, in his letter or in his command, he said any single person, does not matter if you're a woman, you are a person of disability, you are a child, if you were found, you were captured, or you were killed. So a lot of men or a lot of women and children that were captured and they were taken to concentration camps. And while in concentration camps, they were used for hard labor. They were used to build roads, to build railways, to build anything that the Germans wanted to use them. And this was free. They were not paid to do any of this work. So they were known as the slave laborers. That's who they were. They had to do the work for free. The condition in the concentration camps was so terrible that an estimate of about half of the people that were in this concentration camps actually died. It was so hard to survive in this concentration camps. By the year 1907, the Germans were tired of the Nama guerrilla tactics. They said they couldn't take it anymore. They are tired of fighting against these people. There's no way that they can win this war against the Nama. So they asked that there should be a peace treaty, that a peace treaty should be signed. And that's exactly what happened on the 31st of March 1907. The leader, or should I say the governor of German Southwest Africa, Friedrich von Lindequist, declared the war to officially be over because they were so tired. They knew there was no way out. So the war became officially over by the 31st of March 1907, and all the societies of the Namas and the Herero that existed before the war had completely been destroyed. This war claimed about 80,000 of the Herero people and about 10,000 of the Nama people. The survivors had lost their homes, their cattle, their land, and they also became slave laborers, or they were exploited by the Germans, because although the war was over, Germany was still in control of Namibia and they were being used freely. And during this time, that was when the Germans raped the Herero people, resulting in mixed children between the Hereros and the Germans. Namibians were killed in concentration camps, and some of the Namibian skulls of the Herero as well as the Nama people, they were taken to Germany. They were taken to Germany to run tests on them because they wanted to test the intelligence of a black person against that of a white person. They wanted to know, does the size of a brain matter? Are white people more smarter compared to the black people? One of the concentration camps that the Germans used is in Lutrecht, known as the Shark Island concentration camp. Of course, it is not a concentration camp, but it's a very important monument of Namibia. The genocide of the Herero Nama people is a very important aspect of Namibia, because as early as the 1990s, the Herero people as well as the Nama people have been communicating or have been in talks with the Germans so that the skulls could be repatriated back to Namibia. In 2014, if I'm not mistaken, 17 skulls were repatriated back to Namibia, but there are more skulls. And not only that, they also want to be compensated for the lives lost and for the properties destroyed throughout the German occupation of Namibia. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. Do tune in again next time as we look into another history lesson. Should you have questions, please do not be afraid. Do comment on this video. Send me up a message on Facebook as well as on Instagram. Let's get talking. Let's get communicating, and I hope you did find this useful. If not, you are welcome to give me suggestions on how to improve. That brings me to the end. From me, Sich, is adios, mis amores.